Hello, I'm Ryan Cook, and this is Civic Tech Chat, a podcast about the civic technology movement. We seek to harness the power technology has to improve the delivery of public services to people everywhere.
This episode is a special one as we're on site here in Washington, D.C. at Code for DC, and we're going to be talking to a number of folks here about some of the work they did around the National Day of Civic Hacking as well as National Expungement Week. To start us off here, let's have a couple of those folks introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Gwendolyn Washington. I'm the Pro Bono Director for Rising for Justice. It's a clinical teaching program and a direct legal services provider. And we provide expungement services to people with criminal records free of charge, pro bono.
Hi, and I'm Kelly Shoemaker. I'm one of the volunteers with Code for DC. Sometimes I use the title Community Outreach Lead. We're all volunteers.
Hi, I'm Charles Landau. I'm participating today because I'm one of the volunteers on the Rising for Justice Criminal Records Expungement project that we have here at Code for DC. By day, I operate a small software development consultancy called Ideation Partners, LLC. Excited to be on the podcast.
One of the things we like to start with on Civic Tech Chat is the question of personal why. So for each of you, what is that thing that drives you to get out of bed each morning and do what you do?
This is a hard one. I think in a kind of generic way, I would say that I'm motivated just by wanting to do something to make the world a better place.
On a personal level, my family and I have a couple of young boys, and that certainly gets me out of bed in the morning. Professionally, lately I've been on a sort of mission to help organizations connect their business processes and their data, and to sort of unlock the value of the data that they already have in their organization and give it velocity. So there's some obvious ones on the personal side, but that's the professional answer.
Protecting people from injustice drives me to get out of the bed and motivates my career.
How did each of you wind up here involved at a Code for DC event? What's the story that comes before this involvement?
I was so thankful that Kelly invited me to come and pitch one of my projects as part of our expungement clinic to Code for DC, because we were celebrating National Expungement Week, September 21st to the 28th. And as a result, Code for DC adopted Rising for Justice's expungement clinic and decided to create an app for us to help us better serve our clients.
I had been working too much on my own, and my wife told me at one point, she basically said, you have to get out of your head, and you have to sort of get out of doing everything on Slack and go and be more involved in the community. And I said, oh, that's great, because I can't sit in the office anymore. So I started going to a lot of meetups in the DC area, and I had been involved in the public service space earlier in my career, and I wanted to get back to that. So when I saw Code for DC, I was naturally curious. And for this project, I'd only been coming to the group a couple times when I heard that there was somebody from Rising for Justice pitching a new project. And that first night, I went and talked with Gwen, and we sort of spec'd out this project. And it's been off to the races since then. It's actually sort of really developed organically, and the volunteers have all sort of been really energetic about this project. Everybody knows somebody that this affects, so and everyone, sort of sees how difficult it is to do basic things if you're affected by this. So it's very easy to pitch people on participating. The volunteers have been great, and it's sort of happened almost by accident.
I'm friends with one of the original founders of Code for DC, and he asked me to get involved to help connect people that were volunteering on Code for DC projects, connect with people in the community who might be able to provide subject matter expertise, and connect projects to the people in the community who would be using the projects that are built here at Code for DC.
And then, is there any media, be it a podcast, video, print, or something else entirely, that you found to be especially inspiring or informative to your practice?
Starting out, I read Data Structures and Algorithms for Python by Goodrich, and I might be getting the citation wrong here, but that book really changed how I thought about programming. It was written in a really old version of Python, and all the code snippets were formatted wrong, but it sort of was the book where I sort of said, I kind of get this now. Not really related to the project, but I've been reading Up and Running with Kubernetes, and following Kelsey Hightower, always has insightful things to say. I think those would be the two that come off top of my mind, but I'm sure there's a million that I'm leaving out. Anything by Martin Fowler.
I have to say the Constitution. And if we actually lived up to the beauty of the United States Constitution, this country would be absolutely perfect.
I don't think I can think of something right now specifically, but just in general, there are a lot of good sources out there about all of the reasons why it's good to volunteer. So I think that's, some of the things that I look to.
As we hop over to our conversation about the main subject, this project that y'all have worked on together, I'd like to go back and start at its why. How would each of you describe the why for this collaboration?
I think the why, about why we did this event, starts out pretty simple, because we at Code for DC found out that Code for America was announcing criminal expungement as the theme for National Day of Civic Hacking. And so for us, we started thinking about what we might be able to do related to that. We didn't have any existing projects related to criminal expungement. And I knew a little bit about what the city offered to people who were dealing with those kinds of issues. And so among our leadership team, we talked about even if we wanted to do something for this event, and decided that we would try to look around to see if there was somebody or some group or organization that was already doing something that we could assist. So we didn't really want to start something from scratch without already knowing that it would have somebody who would use it. So I made a couple phone calls, and that's how I met Gwen, and it turns out that there was somebody that could use our volunteer efforts to help what they were already doing.
I was so thankful, so very thankful when Kelly reached out to me, you see, because Rising for Justice has been providing pro bono expungement services to the people in the District of Columbia for several years now. And we have a robust partnership with several law firms in town who represent these persons who need expungement free of charge. Expungement or record sealing is so important because a criminal record is the new scarlet letter. And when you have that criminal record, you find it difficult to have employment. You can't support yourself or your family. You have difficulty finding good, safe housing. You have difficulty being able to volunteer for activities in your children's lives. You become something akin to a second-class citizen. You see, the 13th Amendment to the Constitution said that private slavery was illegal. However, slavery for people who are duly convicted in local, state, and federal court is still real and still legal and into the criminal justice system. And so many people who are socio-economically challenged, people of color, have been subjugated to the role of second-class citizen. And expungement sets them in a place where they can have that second chance, where they can become productive members of society and they can erase that scarlet letter.
It sounds like there's a pretty strong partnership here between Code for DC and Rising for Justice. Can we talk a bit about what that relationship looks like from each of your perspectives?
What the relationship looks like from the perspective of a criminal defense attorney doing expungement work is that it makes this application much easier for us to do our jobs, for us to encourage pro bono attorneys to want to volunteer for us, because a process that usually takes 30 minutes, if you have all the moving pieces in place to figure out somebody's eligibility for expungement, is reduced to maybe 5 seconds with an application. That means we get to serve far more people than we ever could, because we're saving so much time at our community outreach expungement clinics. In fact, we have one, 2 coming up. And I'm looking forward to using these applications to serve far more people than we possibly could without it. So I am grateful to Code for America and Code for DC for their ingenuity in being able to streamline our expungement process and make it a lot easier for pro bono attorneys and our attorneys on staff.
I remember one thing I said to Gwen when we first had our conversation over the phone was that I would really like for her to come to our meetup and pitch her project. And I told her that I thought there would be people interested in working on it, but that we're all volunteers and you just never know. And I said, if you can come, if you're willing, and to come and pitch your project, I think people will be interested in working on it. But I said, I have to let you know, there's always the chance that it's just not something that the people who happened to be there that night would be interested in. And we had a few weeks at that point before National Day of Civic Hacking. And I said, even if there aren't any people there this first night, then I think it would be great for you to come back and continue to pitch it, because I think at some point there will be people who are interested in working on these ideas that you have as projects. And so that first night that she came, sure enough, there were a handful of people, and several of those people have continued to be involved week after week. And another thing that was interesting about the initial conversation that Gwen and I had is that Gwen had several ideas for projects, several things that Rising for Justice would like to have that I thought would be good potential projects for Code for DC volunteers to work on. And so I think that the partnership has a lot of potential for a good, strong, long-lasting partnership, because there has been a display of interest among our volunteers, and we get new people all the time, and I think there's just going to be a continued interest in this issue and in these projects. And the fact that Gwen and the people at Rising for Justice have the creativity to see how Code for DC and volunteers can work together on these projects, I think it's evidence that it has a lot of potential to be a really good partnership.
A lot of folks at Code for America has mentioned, talk about that idea of trying to work shoulder to shoulder. And I think what I'm hearing from you both, it sounds like one of those kind of model partnerships to that end. And it seems like it kind of came to fruition in part at this National Day of Civic Hacking event that was also related to the National Expungement Week, both terms that we've thrown around a couple of times here. For the sake of the listener, could we maybe expand a bit on what each of those is? Kelly, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the National Day of Civic Hacking to start.
Sure. I've been involved with Code for DC for a few years, and every year there's a National Day of Civic Hacking, and usually there's some kind of theme, but this year was really the first time that Code for America really encouraged the brigades, which is the term that Code for America uses for the Code for America chapters in different cities around the country and really around the world. But in the past, we've done more general things for National Day of Civic Hacking. Sometimes it's been more kind of like you would think of like a science fair, where the projects that we've been working on are more on display, or we've done some things more like learning workshops where maybe we do like a GitHub 101 session, which we did do this year also, or like a HTML 101 type session for people who are new to coding. So we've done something for the last several years, but this year was really the first year that we participated in the theme that was promoted by Code for America.
And Gwen, could you tell us a bit about National Expungement Week?
So, one of the co-organizers of National Expungement Week, Rafi Crockett, asked me if Rising for Justice would want to put on an expungement clinic to help people in the community. And she and another person by the name of Kristen Turner that I'd been working with on trying to automate the expungement process with records collection, which is key to our ability to practice an expungement law, came together, talked to Kelly about us having this event as part of our National Expungement Week. And I think it was started by the actor Seth Rogen and a few other people across the country who have been trying to move for greater expungement. And so as a result, the National Day of Civic Hacking became one of our events for National Expungement Week because it just coincided. And it was fantastic. And I was so touched by the people who came out that day, September 21st, I believe. And it seemed like it was just standing room only. It was fantastic. Everybody they were all on the same page, regardless of our backgrounds or our areas of expertise. So it was great.
On any app development project, one of the key choices, especially early on with a group, is tooling. What is it that's going to fit best for the scenario at hand? I gather from the GitHub repo that it looks like you're using something called Next.js, which I believe is a React framework. Could you talk a little bit about the thinking and kind of the process you went through to make a choice like that?
Sure. So I picked up React a couple years ago as a way of sort of rounding out my portfolio. And Next.js is a framework that's primarily developed by a company called Zeit. They also make Zeit Now, which is sort of a similar service to, you might be familiar with Netlify. And in terms of React implementations, I found that Create Next App, the sort of CLI code generator, similar to Create React App, and the router in particular for Next.js are intuitive to work with. There's not a ton of additional sugar that goes on top of your familiar React project in order to get started with Next.js, and the sort of the packaging, the configuration out of the box is great for things that will eventually become static websites. So for all of those integrations and sort of happy paths that you get from Next.js, I felt like it was the sort of the best boilerplate to adopt for the project. But really, from the contributor's standpoint, anybody who knows how to write a React component, please submit a PR. It's all of that stuff doesn't really interfere with writing the business logic for this app. It's just sort of convenience at the top level.
Whether it's a project like this, where you have like a lot of volunteers trying to work together on a team, or whether it's like a day job thing, where again, lots of folks trying to work together on a team, I imagine you end up with folks at varying degrees of technical levels and that sort of thing. Could you talk a bit to your experience so far trying to provide, technical leadership to kind of a group like that that's kind of stratifies across different experience levels and maybe involvement levels?
We were one of the main projects for Code for DC's National Day of Civic Hacking, and that was interesting. That's what I would say. We spent a considerable amount of time ahead of time trying to figure out how to triage. We wanted everyone to be involved and included, but there are sort of different tracks that you can put people on to accomplish that. So if someone comes in and says, I have experience advising people how to make accessible apps, maybe they should be in the room even if they can't contribute in terms of submitting a PR. If you have somebody who has familiarity with our entire set of tools, then that's great, and maybe they should be in the room even if they haven't shown up before. If somebody needs help learning how to use Git, or is sort of ready to start contributing but needs a little bit of hand holding to get there, well, we were there for 6 hours, right? So the plan was sort of to have a track that was intermediate where we could say, all right, you're the feeder group. We're gonna onboard you a little bit and hopefully get you to the point where you can be in the room contributing in terms of writing PRs or writing actual code. And then there's a huge space in the project for the design side and for the really what you would probably call the human side. Sitting with our partner in this project, Gwen, and figuring out how the business logic of the implementation of the app can map to the business logic of actually analyzing a case, of understanding whether a case is indicated to be eligible for expungement or not, and understanding sort of what information can be at the top level, what information needs to be at a more granular level, because it's not necessarily the same as how it would naturally flow in a conversation. So doing that triage was a complicated problem. We did the best we could to prepare for it, but it was also sort of getting there and accepting that I'm not going to be writing code today. I'm actually going to be talking to people, getting people ready to come aboard, getting people's heads wrapped around the code base, or routing people over to one of the other contributors who's sort of running a GitHub workshop, so that they know how to sort of do social coding at a more basic level.
I would imagine an application like this, at some level, has to either store or interact with information about real-life people. So what kind of considerations or precautions have you had to take around, that area of data privacy or like personally identifiable information? Is there anything you can share about that?
This was one of the coolest parts of this project because the first day we sat down, we figured a way forward where we just don't persist the data. We're not calling IndexedDB. We're not calling local storage. We're not calling APIs. There's no fetch. There's no Axios. The user and the user's browser is responsible for that end of it. There's nothing I can do if a user with a hacked Chrome installation starts using the web app and that's sending stuff out. I can't control that. But we're not installing Google Tag Manager. We're not installing Axios. We're not using the fetch API. So there's basically no persistence of data besides, and these are the two cases, autocomplete, which we can do several things to not just simply not implement, right? Or prevent from activating, or give the browser hints not to use on a particular field. So that's one, autocomplete. And two, the save to PDF API, which is how the data gets persisted at all within the Rising for Justice organization. The user experience, just to give you a sense of how the data moves through the app, Gwen collects all the information that the lawyer at the pro bono legal clinic will have about the person, and puts it in front of the lawyer, and then only after they have all that information puts the prospective client in front of the order. This is how she's described it to us, in front of the lawyer. And then user inputs happen, and those user inputs are checked against the business logic that determines, or that RFJ determines, can indicate whether somebody may or may not be eligible for criminal records expungement. And then someone calls a save to PDF API, and that file goes directly onto a USB key and goes to Gwen. We can implement some of that, right? We can implement a save to PDF API that doesn't call an external service. We can simply not implement some of the data persistence APIs that I mentioned earlier. Operationally, we can't implement the part where the PDF goes to Gwen's USB key and nowhere else. That's out of scope. Just like making sure that the browser has not been hacked is out of scope. So when I said this was a fun dimension of the project, what I mean is in so many ways we get to protect data that's or implement data protections that are in scope for the project simply by not implementing things that every front-end developer's urge is to implement. Why am I not using IndexedDB for this? So it's fun. It makes you feel clever by not doing anything, by being succinct. But it's also it's nice to be simple.
I imagine on both your parts there was a considerable amount of intent and energy that went into planning an event like this, whether it's like the logistics, trying to recruit folks, all the things in between. Are there any lessons learned from this experience that you would like to share with listeners out there that maybe might seek to do an event like this of their own at some point?
I think no matter what your area of expertise is, no matter what it is that you do for a living, we all share a same like mind in wanting justice and equality for our friends and neighbors and people in our community. And it's wonderful that we could come together to make this a reality. And so I really appreciate that despite some people are more technologically minded, where I'm more arts and humanities, we could come together to do something for the good of the community, and I'm eternally grateful for that opportunity.
If I can share something that I tweeted during the planning process, this is a little bit just of my sense of humor maybe, but really relates to the planning process. I posted, I don't really do anything, parentheses, after 2 hours of event planning on Slack, parentheses, also me. I guess this is kind of a lot of work when you look at it like that. And I think one of the lessons that I learned is that, and I've learned this lesson before, but as lessons go, we learn them over and over. But I think the main lesson, my main takeaway from this event was that I initially intended for this event to be pretty small. I wanted Gwen to be there. I wanted the people who are working on her project to be there. I wanted them to have a productive time to get some things done on the project. And beyond that, I really imagined that there wasn't going to be much else happening, but that's not what happened. And I think that it was great because there was so much interest from so many different people, and there were so many other organizations and people who wanted to partner with us. And I was really excited to have all of those people involved, but it was a bigger logistical event than I initially intended. And so I think that my takeaway was that even though I thought it was going to be a small event in the beginning, if I was doing it again, I would want to plan it as if it was going to be a big event, just because I think everything turned out great, but I think it just would have been a more peaceful and enjoyable planning process for everyone involved if we would have done things like had in-person planning meetings rather than just doing everything through Slack and email. And, one of the things that I tell people all of the time is that when I think about my volunteer projects, I really am not looking for more reasons to spend on my computer at home alone. that one of the things that motivates me about volunteering is getting to spend time with people who share my values and enjoy doing the same things I enjoy doing, like these types of events. And so I would have been happy to plan a few event planning meetings where we could spend time together and have some food and drinks and things like that, and just answer everybody's questions in person while we're all together, rather than having a lot of little short messages back and forth saying, oh yeah, somebody else has already taken care of the issue with the coffee, you don't have to worry about that type of thing.
An important aspect of a project like this is feedback from the folks that would use the application, I guess in this case, in question. So how have you all managed to try to manage that sort of feedback loop thus far?
When the design for the project came about, it was based on an eligibility determination cheat sheet that I have for expungement law in DC. And so my cheat sheet read like code. If X, then Y. If this, then that. And so basically the designers were able to adapt my cheat sheet into a line of code and to be able to support it through a PDF that is fillable and disappears, can be saved for each client. And so it was really a natural fit that my cheat sheet would have been the basis for the application. And so I'm still answering questions, my expertise in expungement, as they're building in more lines of code, but it's fantastic. And I love Slack. I'd never seen Slack before. I joined Slack. It was just terrific because you could just answer questions right then and there and talk to people and upload documents. And so thank you, Slack. I really need to get up on this technology stuff. It's fabulous.
Just also want to comment, we don't have a Slack sponsorship, as much as that may have sounded like it is the case. But it's a tool that folks use really successfully, I think, throughout the network. So hearing some praise for it definitely sounds pretty normal to me.
One thing I would say about this project in terms of the user is I think that this project is interesting and a little bit different than a lot of ones, because on some level there are two different kinds of users for this project. One obviously is what you might think of as the final end user, which would be the people with criminal records who are looking to have their records expunged. But really, in terms of Code for DC and the projects that we're working on, our users are really the pro bono attorneys who are going to be using this form. And so I think one of the things that's been great about this partnership, and one of the things that Gwen and I talked about right from the beginning, is that Gwen has been here all along. And like she just said, she has been on Slack and she's made herself available to the volunteers working on the project, where she can answer questions as things come up. And, you know, one of the things that I talk to people about a lot is that with Code for DC, we're really not here to just do free work for companies that don't want to have to pay a developer to build something. We don't just get an assignment from an organization and then they disappear and then we talk to them again once we finish the project. You know, that's just not what we do. But Gwen has been willing to be present at our meetups and available through phone calls and email and Slack and all of that. And so I think that on another level, Gwen is a user too, and she's been actively involved in the whole development process.
A tradition we have here on Civic Tech Chat is to leave space at the end of our episode for guests that are on the program to give us an idea of what we should leave this conversation thinking about. Sort of concluding thoughts, if you will. So for each of you, what would you like the listener to take away with them as they depart this audio presentation?
Yeah, so I guess I would reference something I said earlier because it's sort of becoming my guiding principle, but the way that your business process interacts with data and how data lives in your organization, that's really what this project comes down to. We're trying to find a way to represent a very clear legal process, legal analysis as data, and then connect that to a more efficient business process. And if we can do it right, then it can make things go quicker, enable these attorneys who are donating their time to serve more people, make more determinations, find more clients who potentially can have their records sealed. And those people can then go on to use services that otherwise would not be accessible to them, get housing that they might not be eligible for otherwise, have jobs that they might not be able to get otherwise. So anything we can do to help them serve people faster and therefore and better, and therefore serve more people and have more of these outcomes, that to me, that's a demonstration of the power of connecting data more quickly to business processes. And it's also sort of an example of how by doing things simply, we can have a big impact. So that's what I find inspiring about this project, besides the people. And I hope, we'll talk more with Gwen about the people side of it. But on the technical side, that's sort of what I find impressive.
One of the things that's been really interesting to me throughout this process is to learn about the pending legislation here in DC, where we have several people in leadership positions who are really looking to improve the process. And I think one of the things that's exciting about this project is that when that law changes, that we can update this application, this online app, immediately and quickly, and all of the pro bono attorneys will immediately be working from the most recent, relevant, accurate information.
I think that my last thoughts on this is that the law, as we learn in law school, is an ever-changing thing. And it grows and adapts and changes to fit the changes in society. And technology is pretty much the same way. And I was very happy to see, the intersection of law and technology being done for a good cause. And hopefully this can happen in many other areas to make society and make our lives a better place to be.
You can follow us on Twitter using the handle @CivicTechChat, visit us on the web at civictech.chat, or subscribe to us for content updates wherever it is you download your podcasts.